the it's funny because Ben spends his time up there lecturing the Turning Point, America Fest or whatever audience about how conservative, if you're a conservative, you call yourself a conservative, which I think a lot of the people who are Turning Point types don't these days, honestly. They might call themselves right-wingers. I think a lot of them would hesitate to actually identify with that term. But he said, if you call yourself a conservative, then you have to be willing to put principle, put the truth above personal relationships, loyalty to individual people or to groups and blah, blah, blah. And then he went on to just brazenly lie about the USS Liberty incident and just lie about the crew members, and what the stories that they've told when a kid asked him about it. And he did that. Why? He's casting aside the truth to defend his tribe, the thing that he sat there excoriating, other people for doing and warning, admonishing the crowd not to do. And, it's a...
Pardon me for interrupting here, Darryl, but can you please clarify that? Because I did not watch all of Ben Shapiro's.
Yeah. So they were taking questions and somebody asked him about the USS Liberty incident. And at first he said, it was so long ago. Why do you care? Why should we care about something that happened so long ago? And it's like, all right, but let's.
Go ahead anyway.
He said that, and then he just went on to sing about it was an accident and friendly fire and these things happen in war, and then he implied that the kid was an anti-Semite for asking. He's like, well, why are you asking? Why do you care? Why is that a question that you would want to ask? That kind of thing. When you go through the Liberty incident, which I know a lot of people who are fans of ours have, they're familiar with it, but a lot of people aren't. Like, just go through like some of the basics of what happened there in 1967. The Egyptian Navy had already been sunk. It was sunk the day that Israel launched its surprise attack. So the important thing for people to understand about the incident is that the crew members, ever since they started speaking out decades ago, they've been absolutely consistent about what happened that day. There's not a he said, she said, and this and that. That does not exist in this instance. You have to believe that the entire crew, let's steelman the most generous interpretation of what the rationalizers of the Liberty incident say. Like, the most generous interpretation of their view is that, well, these men, look, yeah, they were there and they saw these things, but, in a given incident like that, everybody only sees like a little part of it. It's like, if you're in the engineering compartment, then, you're not topside. And if you're topside, you're not seeing what's going on here on the bridge and all that kind of stuff. So maybe they're just confused, but again, they all tell the same story. They all tell the same timeline of events. And when you look at, the lies, the exposed lies that have come out over the years, like the fact that they tried to say there was no flag flying. It's like, well, we got the signalman who was on the bridge on watch at the time, the guy literally in charge of running the flags up and down the poles, who was there, who put it up himself, who was looking up at it as all this was going on. And then it gets burned up in that initial attack. And what did they do? The same guy, the guy on watch, in charge of the flags, runs the holiday ensign up, which is a great big giant flag that we only fly on federal holidays. And so they tried to say that, it was a misty, cloudy day. No, it was a perfectly clear day, actually. And so, in court, they say when you lie about things like that, it shows consciousness of guilt. You're lying about it for a reason. You're not just doing it just because you kind of compulsively do it or something. There's a reason behind it. And so,
displaying the life raft full of bullet holes in their Navy museum in Tel Aviv?
I've seen.
Does that indicate anything?
It's in Haifa.
Haifa. Sorry.
Yeah, I've seen it, and
oh, really?
Yeah, I used to, when I would work in Israel when I was with the DoD. Most of the time, I would be based out of Haifa because that's where their main port is that our ships and pull into and stuff. And so, yeah, I've seen it. I went there. I looked at it. And a lot of people, they'll try to tell you, if you like go online and mention it and someone wants to defend the Zionists, they'll say, well, look, this was a significant incident. And, it's a part of history. And so, yeah, it's going to be, go to Haifa, go look at the thing, go look at the way it's displayed. This is not something that is like, here's a tragic example of like something that happened with one of our best allies and like something we always need to keep in mind. No, that is not how the thing is displayed at all. That thing is a trophy. I mean, 100%. And I mean, and when you think of, there's like so many things about the attack that if you don't have a certain amount of familiarity with like how the military works, especially the Navy and Air Force, how they work, that will just sort of go past people where, like they say that they didn't know it was an American ship, misidentification of the ship. And it's like, okay, well, we know that Israeli jets were buzzing that ship all morning long, like back and forth, buzzing that ship. And the guys on the ship remembered thinking to themselves and telling each other, oh, we're safe. The Israelis are up there watching over us, so everything's cool. And nobody's going to come bother us, the Egyptians or all the bad people, who might attack us. Why we're safe from
the Israelis admit that, by the way.
Yeah,
the Israelis admit what you just said.
And so, as part of my job when I was in the military, and I was not somebody who, I wasn't a tactical commander or a pilot or anything like that, but it was still like, it was tangential to my job, but I still had to go through training. Literally every single year, I'd have to go through a training evolution where they would make us like memorize and be able to identify ship silhouettes, plane silhouettes of platforms that allies and enemies had. You have to be able to identify that. Pilots, that is drilled into them nonstop, being able to identify like a ship platform based on silhouette. I mean, the idea again, that's something that like you don't really need that when you consider the fact that it was a clear day with a big American flag flying on the ship, they spent hours going back and forth and looking at it. But it's one of those things that like it's so galling when people try to come like when like the things that. Oh
wait, to finish the thought, Darryl, what you're trying to say is the ship looked nothing like an Egyptian trawler, and specifically the Egyptian trawler they say they thought it was. Give us all a break. It even had a very oddly shaped bow and all this stuff. The Egyptian boat did. And so it definitely, there's no way even I would make
and the Liberty was absolutely brimming with, radar and communications antenna everywhere because of its mission. Like this is the idea that it was misidentified is, I mean, like
it's a lot.
It's so ridiculous that it honestly doesn't merit discussion.